Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we are talking to corporate sales trainer Jim Burlison. Hello, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. Another one of the amazing guests that I have lined up to share their amazing experience with you is Jim Burlison. Jim is a corporate sales trainer, and once he agreed to be on my podcast, I got to say I was pretty stoked because he has a peek into a world that I'm not super familiar with on the corporate side, and in a more formal business sense instead of kind of entrepreneurs and small business. So I've been just super excited to have Jim here. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot wait to hear what you've got to say.
Well, Kale, thank you so much for the invite. And I don't know if I've ever been told I'm amazing. So thank you very much.
Right.
Appreciate that. And before we start, I do want to just, we're a few weeks outside of July 4th. And I was listening to your podcast the other day with Ian. And it was, you guys were talking about your veterans. And I just want to, again, thank you for your service to our country. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was a fun, actually, Ian and I didn't know that about each other before we were connected. So that was kind of a fun discovery for each of us to get to reminisce a little bit.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Well, I sure do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a nice surprise. I appreciate that, Jim. But today is about you. So you've got some very, what I would consider unique experiences in how you came about to where you're at now. And as I'd mentioned in the intro, you are a corporate sales trainer. Now, I think, at least in my mind, maybe I'm the unique guy out here, but when I think of sales training, I don't necessarily think of kind of corporate level. Like, what does that mean? What do you do? How did you get to that spot?
Yeah, great question. So how did I get to this spot? So, I started, very young in my career in sales. I got married when I was 17. And
I was 18 when I got married. So you pipped me just a little bit.
Just by a little bit, by a fraction. And then, so I entered into the car business.
Okay, cool.
So I was in the automobile business for 24 years. And, everything from sales rep, sales manager, GSM, GM, just kind of worked my way up the ladder is what I did.
Wow. Yeah.
And then for the last 13 years, I went into the in-home services business. I went through the D word, the divorce, about 15, 16 years ago. And at the time, having time with my sons trumped, the business that I was, currently doing and in love with. I loved everything about the car business.
Right.
So I went into a whole new field. I went into the in-home services where we were fixing homes foundations, a homeowner's largest asset, if you will. So I went from selling, sizzle, right? Hot cars and
yeah.
You're going to look great in this car to, hey, let's do the practical thing and invest in your home,
Right.
From the unpractical, let's buy this automobile, so it was a complete change of gears. But so I went into that field and then I just kind of worked my way up to the director of sales in 2017.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, it was great in the very beginning. It was a lot of excitement. I felt like I was doing exactly what I was doing in the automobile business, managing a rather large organization and having a big impact. And, we were setting records year after year and everybody was having fun. Everybody was making money. Yeah. But it started to lose its luster, if you will. And I think part of that was me getting back in, basically completely sold on the Grant Cardone licensee journey. Okay. Right. What was that all about? And, hearing Grant that he wants to help and get 8 billion people to know him. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, by the way, he went from 7 billion to 8 billion, like overnight.
He did. I did notice that. So I was like, I remember that specific because I'm like, wait a minute, didn't just like 2 or 3 days ago he was saying 7 and now it's 8? Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the
What does he say? Just add a zero, right?
Yeah, just add a zero.
Just add a zero. So I just got to the point where I was, I was having fun. We were having results, but I wasn't fulfilled. And, so I think a majority of it was on me. Could I look at the employer and say, well, there are some things that they were changing too that maybe, we weren't in alignment with anymore. I suppose I could, but at the end of the day, it really was my decision. So I went to them about 1.5 years ago and I just said, hey, listen, we just came off another record year. Right. And I'm ready. I'm ready to move on and, grow up and do what I want to do with my life now, and,
Right.
nothing like waiting until 53 until you do that.
Right. Right.
So it was them that said, hey, well, if you love what you're doing with that, and we love what you're doing here, and we love you here, why don't we figure out a role where you can do what you want to do within the four walls of our company?
Right.
Caught me by surprise. Didn't know,
Yeah.
sounds good to me. So, we had to work out some wrinkles and things like that, but we eventually worked it out. And this corporate sales trainer, if you will, it's a small business, but it's a big, small business. We're doing about $50 million a year.
Yeah.
And,
awesome.
So yeah, I've been doing that now for the last, 18 months. And, but again, even after my first year doing that, it wasn't fulfilling me. So,
Right.
you're kind of the first to know. So this is my final year with the company.
Okay.
So come March of next year, I'll be full-fledged on my new journey of being a solopreneur.
Awesome. Awesome. Exciting. Congratulations. And
Yeah,
thank you for
exciting,
breaking the
scary,
news here.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, corporate
All
sales
of the
trainer,
above.
you're working with all departments. You're working with all gears in the company. You're working with
Right.
the appointment center gear, the customer care gear,
Yeah.
marketing gear,
Resources.
sales gear,
Yeah.
the installation gear. So anything that has to do with maybe culture, leadership, top line sales revenue, whatever it is, it's sales is in every department, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's getting the buy-in that the appointment center is selling the appointment, marketing is selling the lead. So that's how corporate sales trainer came about.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now you had mentioned a couple times this word of fulfillment, and I think it's fascinating because I think pretty much everyone can relate to that in some sort of fashion in some area of their life, whether it be their work life or their personal relationships or friendships, whatever that is, where you kind of come up to this, like whether by a natural progression, like, okay, I've accomplished everything I've wanted to accomplish with this goal or this task or this job, and now it's time, it's this natural, just you find yourself there. And then other times you're grinding, and then you just wake up one day and you realize, like, what am I even doing here? This isn't working for me anymore. Which one of those did you lean more towards, or if there was one or the other that you kind of came to that point where making this switch was in order?
Yeah, it was a progression is what it was. And what I failed to do, to be honest with you, Kale, is I failed to follow the advice of our mentor, Grant.
Okay.
To be honest with you. And I think, I don't know of many other licensees that are with Grant that started following Grant since 1990. I mean, when I first saw Grant, when I say it changed my life and how I viewed sales, it like changed my life.
Right.
So, but when I look back and I said, well, if I would have done what he's been teaching and coaching on and mentoring on way back when,
Yeah.
it's hard to say, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So you get married, you've got kids, you've got responsibilities, and then you look at the security of the sure thing versus, as much as you say, I believe in me, until you get out there and do it.
And just you.
There's that level of what if it doesn't work out,
Yeah.
So I think it was a progression. And then, just hearing Grant say, hey, I went from 100 million net worth to 1.2 billion net worth from the age of 52 to 62.
Yeah.
And he's knocking on the door of 2 billion net worth.
Right.
And I just said, I'm not looking to become a billionaire. Sure would be cool. But, my wife and I, we've done well and we're good financially. But
Cool.
What if we can 10X where we're at now at 54, which is where I'm at,
Right.
and 10X that when I'm 64, and do what I love, help more people, get on more on Grant's journey of getting outside the four walls of the company I'm at and helping other people, other companies do what I've been able to do under the guidance and leadership of these other companies, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I love that because it kind of is a testament to your character of not settling, really. And that is kind of the entrepreneurial spirit of, trying to always move forward and self-improvement and bettering not only yourself and your situation, but providing that service, offering product, whatever that vehicle is to your community, to our community at large, just by virtue of that in business. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot.
Appreciate that.
Now, and again, because I think it's so fascinating, this concept of the fulfillment concept, right? What gave you that, even though it was scary, and maybe the same thing, moving from the automotive world into this new venture that was, like you said, it was kind of opposite. You went
very scary.
Yeah. How did you, was there a moment? Was there somebody that, gave you that kick off the cliff? Like, what was it? Maybe somebody's in a similar situation. They're like, oh, they're not happy with what they're doing, and they see this opportunity, but right, they're freaking out because it's scary to go do it.
Yeah.
What was that for you that caused that move? Maybe in both scenarios, from automotive to your current industry, and then moving on into something new now.
Well, you know what they say, behind every good man is a great woman.
That is true.
So, Grant often, talks about Elena, as he should, with such high regard, right? She's the queen. And I've got a queen, and that's my wife. And Kale, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was December 29th. I had just interviewed with another automobile dealership and was given an offer, a very, very lucrative offer.
Right. And I'm assuming you're a GM at this point of a dealership.
Yeah, I would have been a GM at that store. Yeah. But again, it would have been me, it was the money is what it was. And she said, well, I thought that time with the kids was the most important thing. Right. And she says, we've got this. You don't need to stay.
How old were your kids at that time?
Geez, at the time, well, they were older, but okay. I had twin boys. I have 4 boys and a daughter now with my wife now. But at the time, my twin boys, I think, were 11. Okay. And then I have a 14-year-old, and then it was a 16-year-old at the time. Right.
So very formative years.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. And I was involved in their lives, at a 10x level, if you will. So knowing that she had my back, it was just, that was that vote of confidence to say, okay, well, what do you got in mind? She said, well, I used to work with a guy that was in the car business, and this is the company he's working for. He likes it. You're not going to make as much as you were making in the car business, but he now has a life and some balance and things like that. Yeah. So I took time out of the equation. So I went from one interview one day to an interview 2 days later into a field I knew nothing about, home services. Right. What I knew is I had to hire somebody to fix my home. I knew nothing about fixing a home. And so that was her. It was all her. Her having confidence in me. And I'll tell you what, my 4 boys, my daughter's not old enough yet, but my 4 boys and my wife, they're my biggest cheerleaders. They're the ones who say, you need to be doing something more. In fact, I was at GrowthCon in 2019 in Miami with my 4 sons. Cool. That was a Christmas gift from my wife to all of us is, hey, the 5 of you get down to Miami and be part of this 34,000 person event. Right. And, seeing my son sit next to me for 3 days with personal, professional development, motivation, inspiration, you name it. And they're like, Dad, this is, at some level, at some level, this is what you need to be doing. And it took me 4 years to get to that realization again, but I'm there now. Right. I love it. And man, and I think we all can attest it, and I can hear it in your voice, right? How blessed you are to have that in the form of your spouse. If you want to give her a shout out right now, this would be an appropriate moment. Melissa is her name. Yes. All right, Melissa. Thank you for Melissa. All right. Thank you for being there for Jim and pushing him to this, because I think the world is going to be an absolute better place for you guys and for the rest of us because of that. Yeah. And I remember that specifically because you talked about with Grant and Elena, and he talks about actually getting mad at Elena because she's like, why don't you go after $1 billion? And she was the one that kind of pushed him over his obstacles and fears of that. So that's funny that you said that. I love that. Yeah, I'm a little nervous now because my wife just finished Elena's book. She finished it this morning. No. And let's go. I'm a little nervous. Yeah, get out of the house. Go pound the pavement. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. I love it. Now, did she do the same thing as you kind of recognize your time was coming to a close at your current company as it is coming to a close? Was she
that, again, that spur out the door for something new, or how did that play out?
Are you saying for her?
For her, in her encouraging you, and being that kind of rock and that one behind
Oh
you doing
yeah,
that.
there's no doubt about it. So again, I wouldn't be at the company I'm with now, and it's been 13 great years. It really has, or it will be 13 great years. But she is the person that says, hey, you know what, you've got all this knowledge, and you're coming home, and you're okay.
Right.
But she can tell, like, Kale, when I'm up at night and I can't sleep, it's not because I'm worried about something. It's because I've got so many things going through my mind. I just can't wait to put pen to paper, and then whatever's on that paper, move it into action.
I love it. And
I haven't been that way for about a year. I'm ready to go to bed. I'm willing to sleep in 10 minutes longer.
Right.
And, even when I switched from the automobile business to the in-home services business, I was obsessed with learning everything I could about this business to shorten the learning curve.
Right.
And when I became director, it was like, you're up till midnight, 1 a.m, 2 a.m, thoughts, pen to paper, can't wait to get to work. And it's just one of those things where she can just tell when I'm most happy is when I'm doing what I love.
Yeah, I love that. And that's honestly something that a lot of people don't have, that support system in place, whether by just absence of it, maybe they're single, not married, but also being on a divergent path. Not path is not the right word, but maybe divergent opinions and conceptions with their spouse.
Sure.
Is there anything that you can offer that type of situation for, maybe there's a young entrepreneur out there with a spouse, male or female, that you could say, like, how do you and your wife get on the same page to where your goals are aligned, you're moving in the same direction, as they say, you're rowing the boat in the same direction versus one this way and one this way, and you end up just spinning?
Man, that's a great question, because I'll share with you, right? It's not been easy.
Right.
Because I'm the type of individual that I've already, once I've thought of something, it's like, it's already played out a million times over, and I'm ready to move on it.
Yeah. And
I'm guilty of not getting my wife involved in my thought process early on.
Right.
So a lot of times when I go to her, it's like, oh yeah, I've already played this out. It's going to work. It can't fail. Right? And why aren't you as excited as I am? Yeah. And she's like, and then she's not there. And then I might get agitated with that. But the reality is, it's work. And we still don't have it figured out yet. It's like what Grant and Elena say, right? We're not perfect, but we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Is what we're doing. So in fact, when she completed the book, she's on her way right now to pick up our daughter. Our daughter spent a few days in Michigan, and she'd asked me, because I also listened to the book on Audible. She said, what was your biggest takeaway? I gave her my takeaways. And I asked her what her takeaways were. And she talked about how, we need to get better at communicating, because when I'm ready to jump, I am fully expecting her to be at the same level with me. And she's like, whoa, hold on. Like, it could be like on an investment property. Yeah, hey, you know what? We need to transfer these funds into this account. Wait a second. What property? What state? And I'm like, well, weren't you thinking the same thing I was thinking?
Right.
Like for the last 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So it's work. That's the advice I would give. I'm just being transparent. We don't have it figured out yet, but we're working on that communication part. It's work.
Yeah. And I thank you for being transparent and honest in your answer there, and not just being like, oh yeah, we're this kind of the illusion of the perfect marriage, right? Because I just don't think that exists.
Yeah, we're perfectly imperfect.
That's right. Yeah. We perfectly work together towards our very different everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because Liz, it's funny that you said that, because I was the exact same way with Liz, especially early in our marriage. Like, I'm a very, I went to school for, engineering, mechanical engineering, and that's just kind of how my brain is geared. And I think of, third, fourth, 10th order effects of things. And I would do the same thing to Liz. I'd bring something up and I'm like, here we go. We're going to go do this. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I've been thinking about this for the last 3 weeks and running it through my brain, but I would just never bring it up to her, because I'm thinking I'm doing this awesome service to her by presenting this fully done, thought out package to where all she has to do is just say, okay, let's go, but that's not being a team, right? And the one change that I made, and I guess this would be my advice to those people in this scenario, was alls I would do is tell her like, hey, I started thinking about this, and I wouldn't necessarily have to explain it, but it allowed her now to put it in her brain so she could go through her process, and better, not perfectly, but better, we could kind of come to a point where we're like, okay, let's discuss this and the ins and out and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool.
That's great advice I will take.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, fortunately, I learned it fairly early in our marriage, but it was several years after we'd been married. And
right.
I'm like, why is she never excited about these ideas that I have? Why? But, she kind of, just her natural personality was the kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where she really had to chew on things and analyze her in her own way. And rightfully so. It's not an unrealistic expectation to have.
Sure.
So, yeah, so our little leadership podcast turns into marriage advice as well as just general.
Love it.
Your number one partner on board with you outside of
absolutely check all the boxes.
Now, you're winding down with your current company and getting out of the more formalized corporate business world and coming out of, sounds like, very lucrative, successful career, and you go, okay, what am I going to do? Why coaching? Was it just, like you said, you've got so much knowledge that you want to get out there? Is there something else that you're looking for that fulfillment piece of?
Yeah, I think it's a different kind of win that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a different type of impact. It's can I do it with a different team? Can I do it with a different group of people? Maybe that's part of it. Right. And look, I could be all wrong. Right? It could be, you could see me bagging groceries at the Publix. Right. I certainly hope not. Yeah. But here's what I think. So my wife is in the automobile business, and she works a great deal of hours. She's in the finance section with a dealer group.
Gotcha.
And I was mentioning to her, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I said, something the automobile business is just starving for is like a part-time, been there, done that individual. He or she, doesn't matter. Most automobile dealerships, they have these gaps in like the busiest times of their day, or they don't have someone to cover somebody's day off or something like that, or a particular vacation. And usually, Kale, what that requires is they're having to bring on another very high income earning position. Yeah. Now, when I say a high income, or whatever it is, let's just use 300 grand as a number. Okay. And I said, the reality is, if you get somebody that's been doing it for 30 years, that knows what to do, they're basically plug and play. Been there, done that. I can come in and fill in when Joe's off, when Sally's off. I can work when she's on vacation. I just don't want to do what they're doing 50 hours a week.
Right.
So I said, I know there's a market for that. I just know there is, because you can be of value to that business at a fraction of the cost and still give them that full-time, been there, done that experience.
Right.
So at our company, we brought on a what they call a fractional CFO. I don't know if you ever heard the term fractional.
I've heard the term fractional, but not in that application. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is where my brain started going again, because when I resigned originally a year and a half ago, there was a ship that came to shore, and there was an opportunity for me, and because I stayed with the company I'm at, that ship has done sailed. Right. So will it come back? I don't know, but what I do know, regardless of that ship being there or not, I've got to find my next ship. So I started thinking, well, what if I took on this fractional business coach role for 3 or 4 businesses at a fraction of the cost, and I would provide them the results of a full-time employee.
Right. Wow.
Someone who's been doing this for 30, 35 years, that has built teams, worked with teams, that has proven results both in the retail world and the business to consumer world in home sales. Yeah. And the more my brain started putting pen to paper, I'm like, this is a viable, I believe there's a demand for this product.
Right.
And especially now that we're going into this, what seems to be a recession.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's going to be even more of a lucrative position for companies that say, hey, listen, we're looking for, the results of a 300 grand a year person, but man, if we can do it for X amount of dollars and you only need to put in this amount of hours of work per week for our company, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So that would then allow me to do 3 or 4 companies, to work on my licensee webinar seminar program, to do coaching with 3 or 4 or 5 specific individuals, maybe even at a lower cost. That's my way of giving back, to say, hey, I was where you were at 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Let me help coach you at a very, very, very small cost to get you to where you want to go. And it won't take you 30 years like it took me.
Right. Yeah.
And then hopefully if I can mix in a few speeches on stage, I would love that. So look, that's my plan. I'm probably going to get punched in the face. And, I've talked to a number of businesses and they were like, hey, you let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I want to make sure I'm committed to who I'm with. I'm very competitive. I want to go out with a bang.
Right.
But, so that's where it's at.
That's really cool. I love the concept, and just hearing about it, you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And how is this not a thing already? You know what I mean? Like, how is an entire?
It's exactly what I said.
Just do that. So that's fascinating. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about this. And I think, like you said, you've already got companies that are like, yes, this makes sense.
Well, when you think about it, the laptops are on right now. We spent whatever it is, $1,200 for a laptop. We're only using 30% of it.
Right. True.
The 300 grand employee, whatever it is, 400 grand, $500,000, 200 grand, whatever it is, baked into that is the coffee break, the smoke break, the days off, you name it. And the reality is what you're paying for is really about 30% of their true knowledge and the true value that they're bringing to the company to drive the needle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely if you dug into the math further, and to me, again, engineering brain, I think that would be fascinating to hear and listen, to actually hear those numbers. And I have no doubt that there have been studies out there, and you can easily find those and reference them. But
if I show up on your doorstep next year broke, it didn't work out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You are always welcome.
I can see you and Liz in there. Answer the door.
That's right. I can hear you. Yeah, I love it. Well, by then, right, your kids should be self-sufficient to be able to.
Well, they're all gone. They're all doing well. We've got our 10-year-old daughter though. That's she's equivalent to 4 boys, and she's got a spending habit at 10 years old.
Already,
yeah,
right?
That's bad.
She gotta feed that habit. Keep it
I know.
going. Yeah,
I know.
Get to work, Daddy. I love it. Now, I could go on talking about this forever and ever and ever, but I don't want to be disrespectful of your time, and certainly don't want to turn this into a 4-hour podcast by any stretch.
Yeah.
And I think this definitely deserves a follow-up though in the future. So I hope that you're willing to come back in the future.
Anytime.
And share with my audience, really, I have no doubt the amazing success that you're finding with this. So that's to be something to look forward to. Now, something I do always ask my guests, because everyone has kind of a different opinion and a slight different take on their definition in the business sense of a manager versus a leader, whether by previous experience you had or your own as either of those roles. What's your take on those two terms in the business world?
Well, it's a great question, and there's a lot of cliches to that. What I can tell you is I remember when I was only a manager, and and the advice I got from my mentor. I had a mentor, the guy that I love near and dear, Don, and I remember him coming to me at the time when I was a manager in the car business. He said, "Listen, if you continue at the pace you're at, you're going to give yourself a heart attack before you're 30."
Interesting.
And it was him really leading by example. John Maxwell says a leader goes the way, knows the way, shows the way, or something like that.
Right.
And that's what a leader does. And a leader is someone that most people should respect, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're responsible for leading a company or a group of people, even a person, you want that person to lead and hopefully follow your example. So I think looking back in my career when I was a manager, I was so involved in the daily minutia that when one thing went wrong, it just, but now as I'm older, 54 years old, and I hope I'm a leader, is you have more of a 10,000 foot view. You have a bigger view of what can move the needle, what can build a company, what can scale a company, what can develop a person. I think a leader takes a lot of pride in developing others.
Right.
Where a manager is more, these are the tasks, just make sure that these tasks are followed. And if they are, this is going to be the end result.
Cool.
And they're the ones basically giving the marching orders while the leader is basically developing the plan, if that kind of makes sense.
It does. Yes. And I love it. And
I can give you 100 cliches, but they're cliches.
I know, right? Yeah. And there are certainly a lot of them, because I think we all have certainly our own opinions and a basic concept of what that means if you've ever had a job and had a supervisor, manager type person. But I think a lot of people get lost in what a true leader, and that's kind of the intent of the question, is to highlight what does a true leader look like in comparison to what most people have experience with. And most people have experience with just being around managers and being around, supervisors type of roles, and never, a lot of times, unfortunately, having the opportunity to be around a legitimate leader.
Yeah, and I think you would agree. You've been around, one when you see one.
Yeah, you do.
You do.
And it's one of the things I tell people a lot, especially in my military career, because there's a conception of, the military creates great leaders and everything like that. And there are examples of that. We can all think of, fantastic military leaders in our history, Patton and all those different guys throughout history. But no different than any organization, they are more the exception than they are the general rule. So, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I love that. And definitely with the 10,000 foot view, with the leadership aspect of it, I like that a lot. That's cool. Cool. Well, Jim, how do people, if they want to, they're like, man, you've got my ears ticked about this fractional thing that I don't know if you have a title for it yet, or if you're going to run to the trademark office right now and get something going. Yeah. But how do they get a hold of you if they want to get more information on that, more information on you, what you've got going on? They just want to get into your world and learn more from Jim Burlison. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm committed to the company I'm with now. So you could get a hold of me at my email at the company I'm with, which is it's J Burlison. So letter J Burlison, Burlison at permaseal.net. Okay. Cool. And I do have an email for my company that is started but not up and running yet. Right. That's jim.burlison.eplcoaching@gmail.com.
Perfect.
And the websites are in the works and all that good stuff. So, when we get closer to the end date, you'll see me. You'll get sick of seeing me on social media.
Right. Get some pre-launch stuff going.
Yeah.
And there will be links to those 2 emails in all the comments or in the descriptions of whichever platform that you're watching or listening to this on. So definitely reach out to Jim and say, hey man, at least put me on your list. Let me know, when that all starts to go live. I think it's gonna be pretty exciting.
I will. It's exciting.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. You provided, at least definitely for me, a peek into a world that I'm just not super familiar with. And I think it's fascinating, especially to hear your journey and your different stages, because it resonates a lot, I think, with people in general of like, okay, it's time to go do something else, but I'm freaking out because I don't know if it's going to work out and all those types of things. So thank you for being transparent and vulnerable and honest in that. That's pretty cool. Anything else you got coming up? You got any big projects, any things in the works that you wanted to share with the audience?
No big projects. I've got some in the background that I really just can't make public yet. But yeah, no, I just want to let you know I appreciate everything that you and that Liz are doing. I listened to 3 of your podcasts yesterday. I went on a Kale podcast binge is what I did. I did about an hour and a half straight. So just love the guests that you have on and just thank you so much for what you're doing. And I know you're doing it to help you get promoted, but what it does for us in return, thank you so much. And this 10X community, it's a real thing. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's my pleasure. And really, I would do this regardless of if it benefited me or not, because I think it's fascinating just to hear from
well, I hope it does.
Personalities. Yeah. So, well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, everybody, make sure you shoot Jim an email, get on his list so that you get notified when all his amazing things come. We're just going to keep dropping that on you because it's building. I think the tidal wave is going to be pretty massive when it finally breaks shore. So make sure you're a part of that. Jim, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you donating your time. And hey, everybody, thank you for joining the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. No matter where you are at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.